Hey, there we go. We're live.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
so I'm Yvette Dubell, and this is my new friend, Seth Guest. Seth and
Hello.
I met at the Sustainable Agricultural Conference. Say hi, Seth.
Hello.
So Seth is a young farmer, and so let's start with that. Let's start with where we met. We met at the Sustainable Agricultural Conference. Why did
Okay.
you go?
I have been the past 4 years to that
Oh,
conference, and I've always found it kind of well. Both there's a lot of information, useful information on growing techniques and like that, but also it's also reinvigorating. And I was able to go to that conference with my last job, and now that I'm starting a farm, I felt like it was a good experience and good learning opportunity. I think it's always a good learning opportunity to go to that conference.
yeah, and see, I would think that you would be the target, like ideal attendee because you are a farmer. In
Hmm.
fact, so let's talk a little bit about why you wanted to become a farmer. How did you get interested in agriculture and
Okay.
sustainable agriculture specifically?
Okay. All right. Try to keep it somewhat quick. Um,
Okay, we got
so
30 minutes.
I,
Take your time.
all right. So I was a student at University of South Carolina Upstate first, and was looking to transfer because I wanted to go into religious studies, and my plan was to go into academia and go into Islamic studies. Um, but when I was looking at places, part of my draw after kind of being made more aware of concerns about how my food is grown.
Hmm.
A lot of it was kind of idea of food as medicine, particularly with my mother having a lot of health problems, and diet seemed to be much more of a help than any pharmaceuticals did. Um, so I kind of came from that angle at first. I kind of became interested in community garden because it just seemed like a great idea to be able to kind of interact with people. It's like it's like a social setting, but you're also doing work that will benefit your health, and if you're doing it well, also the environment too. Um,
Right.
so I ended up going to University of South Carolina in Columbia. I didn't even know there was a community garden on campus, but happened to walk by it on the way to class. Started volunteering. Ended up being pretty much the only student that was really volunteering. So I
Oh,
got hired on to be a manager of the garden and kind of integrate it with some classes and all. So I also enjoyed the teaching aspect of it. Um, kind of a lot of it was learning by teaching. I also met kind of a mentor to me, Matthew Kipp, who worked at the university at that time, and so he introduced me to the concept of permaculture,
yeah.
which is kind of combining permanent and agriculture together.
Hmm.
Um, and so the idea it's it's a way of designing agricultural landscapes.
Hmm.
So you kind of think you develop these systems that all work together, um, that benefit people and the planet, and you have a surplus that you share. And so I was really drawn to that. There's kind of a creative aspect to it,
Definitely.
too. So it's more than just um, you know uh, plowing and straight lines and growing. That definitely can be part of it, but it's part of a bigger picture, and it's a little bit more complicated than, we'll say, um, industrial agriculture, which is pretty short. A lot of inputs that make up for all the nutrients you're losing.
Right.
And then it's still probably a little bit more complicated than just your standard organic agriculture. Um, and so I end up working at the university for about 2.5 years after I graduated,
Hmm.
and worked on some other farms. And then this past year, decided my work at the university was not what I wanted to do. I wanted to focus more on production, um, which I couldn't really focus on, and also I didn't have anyone to really help me, to mentor me like I had before when I was a student.
Right.
That person had left that their job at the university, so I just felt like I needed to do something, and then I ended up having something that's a huge problem for most young farmers kind of settled, was that I had a friend who bought land. She actually had the intention to start a farm, but just never got to it because she was still working and everything. And so her name's Anne, who I met through her daughter Christine. And I think after Christine and then Anne hearing about how I just didn't like my job as it was, kind of just put this idea in head that I could start a farm on that land. So I wasn't really sure if they were serious or not, but I decided to try to take them up on it anyway, and thankfully they were. And so I spent the last year working on an organic farm, so something that was more production focused rather than aesthetics and education focused. And so, because I think that's what I'd rather focus on right now. I mean, maybe in the future I could do more education, but I think part of what I felt lacking for me in my last job was that I don't think I had enough knowledge to be a very good educator. I definitely knew enough to give tours and everything, but I just felt like I needed to learn more about actual production before keeping on, yeah, teaching about production. So, but that's that, and then also I think it's the kind of idea that I'm not like a capitalist, ready to make a bunch of money. I mean, farming would be a pretty bad choice, but I feel like having your job be doing the good that you want to see in the world, I think that's kind of important because you only have so much time, and so and a job takes your career takes most of that, a lot of that time, and you need time for downtime and other things too. So that's another reason I kind of wanted this a career in sustainable agriculture to be my career.
Now, what is the biggest difference you see in developing? I'm sorry, there's a hair sticking up somewhere, and I can't figure out where it is. I'll stop looking at myself. What is the biggest difference that you see between a farm that's focused more on education or things like that, as opposed to one that's focused on production? Because when I think of it, I remember we had a little bit of conversation about like your business plan around your farm. Is that the biggest difference, or is it something else?
Well, part of it is that it was part of a university, and so a lot of it is also priorities are with appearances, both with the actual appearance, especially with we'd have to get in fights with landscaping a lot because it didn't fit the university's aesthetics. So there's that part of it, which is kind of minuscule, but it's kind of grating because you have to fight that a little bit. And it got better and better. Part of it also was kind of having to, a lot of my success was measured by how many volunteers I had in the garden, which a lot of times were students that worked for just an hour, and I just basically that's not enough time to really teach someone about what sustainable agriculture is about, and it wasn't really, that also doesn't help with the actual labor needed either. So it felt like it was, I was just kind of like upping numbers for a lot of times for that sort of thing. And a lot of my job, I did a lot of other things like garden club at 2 elementary schools. Worked a lot of times to give tours during classes. So there's just a lot of extra stuff that made it so that I could hardly focus on the production, and I was actually discouraged from being outside in the garden. So um, that was, I guess that was my why I wanted, why I didn't feel like that was where my values were. You know, it seemed a lot of it seemed like what I was doing was more for show. That makes sense.
Yeah, well, the numbers game says a lot. I mean,
Mhm.
that says volume.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of developing your business plan and strategy for making this something that's sustainable, where did you start with that?
Um, a lot of research. I've grown fond of podcasts because then I could do my like harvesting work and then listen to someone talk about creating business plans and all. Um, I'm actually taking a new and beginning farmers program with my business partner Anne. So we're now kind of just starting to get into the. This, we'll have our second class Thursday.
Oh,
So we're now just starting to get into the business part, which is what I wanted to learn more about. I definitely have a lot to learn about growing, but the business aspect is what's most new to me. Um, and I think I have focused a lot on trying to come up with a business plan and on efficiency and what markets would have, just because I guess my concern is that I want to keep on doing this, and to keep on doing this, it has to at least be able to scrounge up a living off of it, and I would like for it to be a living for more than just myself too. So I'd want to be able. Another goal is for us to be able to expand it to encompass everything we want to, not only just to produce more food, but part of the aspects of what we're thinking is to integrate different systems. So, like with livestock, with tree crops, that sort of thing. So having it so that we can hopefully produce the fertility we need from on the farm, or being able to like take waste streams. So doing composting of some sort, which is where we are. I don't see anyone doing at all. So being able to do it for both for cheap, but also something that would help the environment. Diverting from waste streams is another kind of big thing.
oh, now see, that's an interesting thing. I didn't think of that. Okay, so what kind of crops, or what would you start with as I mean, have you already started planting?
We've only put garlic in the ground, so right now it's just garlic.
Okay. So what kind of things would be ideal starting crops for a new farm? Would you start with something that you know the market needs?
Yeah, I would do that. Part of what we're looking, I haven't gotten a lot of specific. I have some ideas of some crops,
Hmm.
but I haven't specifically laid down. In a couple of weeks, I think after Thanksgiving, we're going to talk to chefs because that's kind of the market we're going to focus on first,
Okay.
and talk to chefs about what are some different varieties, things that they would not be able to easily get, especially in quantity and also the quality that they want for their dishes.
Okay.
What are some different kind of offbeat things? For instance, there's one chef that has a background in Chinese cooking, so looking for different varieties that is used in Chinese cooking that isn't very commonly found. Um, but these are also restaurants. We're starting off with restaurants that are very much geared towards farm to table. So they are ones that are
Okay.
wanting to promote local food systems. Um,
Now,
and
how far away are you looking at supplying? Like, how close are the chefs or restaurants that you're working with?
they're about time-wise within an hour drive. So, because we're in what's Saluda County, South Carolina, in the Midlands, which is between kind of Columbia and Aiken,
Okay.
because my business partner and I both have ties in Columbia. It's where she's spent much of her adult life, and then I've been there past few years and um, gotten to know people within like food systems work in Columbia. So that seemed to be the natural fit because the scale we're doing, like we're starting off very small, like a market garden type size, so probably won't be even an acre of production of vegetables in the first year, maybe more. But with that, we're going to have to look at what like niche markets, so specialties like those strange crops I was talking about, so that we can charge kind of more of a premium for that price, and that's more likely to get that sort of price in the city rather than in the country, just because that's what people usually in urban areas are more looking for.
So you need things that they can't find easily at other places, is what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And so that's the kind of idea, at least for starting out. We'll have to, within the our plans, I think we'll be looking both to expand the production, but also would like to do something, both Ann and I would like to do something that has a little bit more kind of social justice, food security type thing. But I think that's something we'll have to kind of figure out how we can develop and who we can partner with to make that happen. So I think that would be something we'd want someone who would be more in the know of what is really needed, whether that's in Columbia or within the area of Saluda Ward. I mean, those are possibilities that we don't have planned, but we're kind of keeping an eye out on,
Now, you mentioned social justice or food justice, and I think somebody else used the term at the conference, culinary justice. When I talked to Jared, he talked a little bit about his perspective and interest in that, coming from Oakland, and which was a food desert, he shared.
Yeah.
So what would be your interest in that sort of issue, being in South Carolina, which is not a place that I think people would think that would be an issue?
So
in the same way, it wouldn't be like, you don't, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I know kind of within Columbia, there would definitely be an opportunity to work on food insecure. Well, there are some very food insecure places where there are not, there's not availability to fresh produce for miles, and especially with people of lower income that don't have transportation. That can be quite a problem if their closest food source is just a convenience store. Part of what I'm thinking of, so I talked about how we would have these niche markets that we might have a higher price on things. That's definitely wouldn't work for the places that are food insecure. And my thinking is that we'd be able to grow those sorts of crops, and then later, and we'll probably sell, more, I guess, normal things too, but later on, being able to grow things that are not quite as high value, that would be easiest for us to produce, and then be able to sell that at a cheaper rate for people that are more in need. Kind of like the idea of, I've heard of restaurants, I think it's Cuba, that will have a price for tourists for their meals, and then they'll also have a price for the people that live there, and the people that live there who make less money than tourists obviously have a cheaper price for their meals. So kind of that idea is, but being able to make that differentiation just by having a different product.
Right. Now that's an interesting take on it. What would be the kind of things, when you talk about things that would be more what would be the difference in those kind of crops, like a higher end crop? I don't know why you said Chinese cooking, and I immediately started thinking like bok choy or something.
Yeah.
Is that like?
Yeah. I mean, usually that's something that's a little bit higher, especially is kind of strange, but a lot of times what we would think of as more ethnic foods, just something that's not common.
It's like Napa. Is Napa? That's in the same. Yeah, I don't know if they grow similar. Yeah. Do they grow in similar conditions?
Yeah. They're I think they're pretty sure they're both, yeah, they're both the same actually species of plant. And yeah, they usually spring, fall crop. And those were things that the last farm I was at, they grew.
So Napa
Things,
would be spring, bok choy is fall. Is that right?
no, they're both fall and
Both?
spring. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So in South Carolina, we have this kind of what we call the shoulder season. So the spring and the fall, they're it's always kind of like the race to in the spring it's to beat the heat, so get
Right.
things to mature before it gets too hot, and then in the fall we're starting things where it's way too hot for them to to survive, like out in the field, starting them in pots, and then trying to get them out before it gets too cold, you know. For some things can survive all winter here. But yeah, there's some things, they're also like, well, it used to be that kale was like a big, huge, like trendy vegetable, you know, and that
Yeah.
was something that was, you know, really cool, and so farmers could charge more of a premium for. And then there are some things like there's celtus, which is actually an Asian vegetable. It's actually lettuce that you breed. Well, you raise it for the stalk of it,
Oh,
which is usually pretty bitter, but this has a more mild flavor to it. So the stalk actually goes up when it's starting to flower. So usually with lettuce, it's just like, oh, it's too far gone, can't sell it. But with this variety, you actually want the stalk, and then you sell the stalk, and it's supposed to taste kind of like lettuce. Um,
interesting.
so so things
Now,
like that are kind of new or trendy. But there
okay.
are things like kale is a higher value because you can, instead of like a head of cabbage where you just cut it and you sell it, kale you can harvest several times. So that
Okay,
makes a
so that
difference.
would be beneficial, right?
Yeah.
Now you mentioned planning for efficiency, and I know I don't know, I don't remember what county you said you were in, but like I know Fairfield County, which is near Columbia, has
hmm
had like they've been subject to some drought situations.
hmm
How do you plan for that? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Part of that would be irrigation. So for our um, market garden, we have well, actually, it used to be a garden. We
Hmm.
figured that out, and so there's water kind of hooked up, so we'll have irrigation for that. Um, Part of that will also be like crop selection for things. So um, I'm not sure. I have to figure out the market for it, but okra is a good southern crop, and mostly because it can withstand a bit of drought. You know, it could still die back or suffer production for not having rain, but it does better than performs better than a lot of crops.
Right.
And then there are some areas where we'll be performing or making earthworks. So we'll be
Okay.
trying to make ways that you can capture water. So one big way is having what are called swales. So they're basically ditches with a kind of a mound behind them,
Right.
and so that'll actually store water and actually change and because it captures more water and actually going to capture some sediment, it will
Right.
change the soil structure so that that whole area can absorb more water. Um, so because we're in
Oh.
clay, so the main thing would be that so that it can uh, kind of retain, not so much retain, but absorb water quicker, because clay will take up a lot of water, but if
Right.
it's really dry, it'll just kind of wash away. Um, so thinking about those sorts of things too.
Wow. Okay. I had not heard of that before. So, see, this is why we're having this conversation, learning all sorts of things. Now, I know when I have experimented with gardening, and I think there was a workshop on edible flowers. I didn't go to
Yeah.
that. But what is the market like for, edible flowers and edible weeds? I think was also, I think it was edible flowers and weeds was, I think, the workshop. How
Yeah.
does that figure into what I guess we would call like a professional farm?
Um, It kind of depends on the crops, and usually those are at this point seem to be restaurants.
Hmm.
You can, especially if you're going for mushrooms, those can often be that can bring in a lot of money because there are some things like morels, which you really only here have like a week window to harvest, but they can be about $50 a pound, an enormous amount of money. Um, and then and then I know something like lamb's quarters is something it's related to spinach. It's also called wild spinach. Um, it can be pretty easy to forage because usually when you plow up a field, it's one of the weeds that can take over the area. So
Oh,
yeah, there is definitely some economic viability, and even there are some people that there are actually you can buy seeds of like lamb's quarters or I can't think of anything else that I've seen. But yeah, that maypop flowers used in a lot of times for either liqueurs or beers or something like that. So yeah, that's definitely an option. It wouldn't be probably the main part, but it could be
right.
a little bit of a side income for sure.
You mentioned mushrooms. I know there were a few mushroom workshops. Did you go to any of those at the conference?
I did not. I've know a little bit about mushrooms, not too much. That is something I'd like to integrate into production, but it's just something like a little bit of a back burner at
Gotcha.
this point because um, I also want to be able to make sure that what I grow is of a good quality,
Hmm.
so it's wanted by both like the consumers that are chefs or people at farmers
Right.
market or whatnot. So that's definitely something I want to put in, but a little bit later on.
Gotcha. Now, would you be working you said you were going to start with about an acre of planting? Planting about an
Yeah,
acre?
more or less. Well, all we have right now, kind of prepared is I don't probably maybe a quarter of an acre,
Okay.
right now, and so that'll be okay for the spring. Kind of get us started because we'll also have some animals too. Um, but yeah, we'll have to figure out our way of. We're either going to have to get a tractor or get someone with a tractor to help us plow out up other areas for growing. So
Have you looked at the walk behind tractors? I actually monitored a workshop on that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I went to that because that is something that I'm interested in because it is you
Oh,
get
that's
a
right. That's
new
where I saw
yeah,
you. That's
yeah,
right.
that's right. Yeah, kind of came in late. Yeah, well, it's like a little bit it's a bit cheaper than a riding tractor,
Hmm.
even than a good used riding tractor. Um, they it's hard. I've been trying to find one walk behind used, but they're just not very common around here. So probably have to buy one used. And it seems like it would do a lot of the things that we need to do initially. So
Have you
that's
checked
what we're discussing.
Craigslist?
Yes, we have. Um, yeah, we did find one, but they sold it before we got to it.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect when I volunteered to monitor that workshop. I thought it would be. It didn't occur to me it was going to be mechanical, which is so silly. Um, I was thinking like old fashioned, with the horse or whatever. Walk by. Yeah. Anyway, it didn't occur to me it was going to be like a mechanical thing. So I got it's like, of course. So anyway, I thought it was going to be like one of those non-mechanical kind of things.
Oh yeah.
So would you be able to
Yeah.
work that by yourself? I mean, if you have like start with that, I think you said a quarter or three quarters of an acre. Will you work that by yourself, or do you need to
Um,
hire?
I would be able to do that right now. So the owner, she recently retired, but she still is managing a nonprofit in Colombia at the moment. So she's also older, so she'll be able to help a little bit, but not full time, or she may not be able to do some things. She has a daughter who is working on a farm in North Carolina and may help out. We're still don't know yet. So I am hoping I'll have that help. If not, I may have to figure out some sort of labor situation. Hiring someone at this point would be kind of difficult, but push comes to shove, I can also just make sure I don't go too far. If I keep it small, then the labor shouldn't be too much of a problem. So it'll just be kind of probably what it'll be is just trying to adapt it to how much labor we have available. Because I don't think we'd be able to hire someone really.
Okay. Well, that's cool. Well, I mean, it'd be fun. It'd be a nice communing with nature experience for you. So I hope you'll keep me posted as you progress. Yeah. Maybe like share a photo or two every once in a while and let me know what's going on. Yeah,
and we'll probably be, once we get some things together, doing some like social media, so Facebook, Instagram, those two for sure, possibly Twitter. But yeah, so I can also let you know once we kind of have that set up.
Yay, please do, because I'm looking forward to watching you grow and, being able to say, like, yeah, I met Seth when he first started. So that'll be really cool. I can't wait to go to a restaurant and, that you're providing food to and be able to say, like, I know the guy who grew this.
So we can get you back to South Carolina?
I come through there, I go wherever good food is.
And there you go.
So, good food, will lure us all. So absolutely.
Oh yeah.
But I'm really happy for you. I'm so happy and proud of you for for doing this and for caring about, food security and the environment and understanding how important this is and being willing to devote yourself to it. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's service to all of us. And I love the whole being the change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's why we're doing this. So, not a lot of people are paying attention yet, but they will. And we'll be, we'll be there.
Yeah.
To see this blow up. So this is incredible. So do you want to share anything about basically people can keep an eye out for you to be sharing some stuff on Instagram, and I'll link back to this original video when you start sharing stuff, so people will, there'll be some sort of connection point. I'm pointing you can see this, but there'll be.
Yeah, I'll let you know for sure. Once we get that. Right now, the name, pretty sure we set on was Warbler Creek Farm, because the owners are pretty, especially one is very avid birders. So, so a bird name had to be in the name. That was a must for them. So.
Oh, that's adorable. Well, when you get a logo and everything going, make sure you let me see that too. I can't wait.
All right. All right. We'll do.
Okay, well, thank you, Seth. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing this. It was fun.
All right, we'll keep in touch, okay?
All right.
All right, have a great night.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.